So in this video, we're going to continue working on logic structures. We're going to focus in on conditional or branching structures, as we talked about last time. And I'm really mainly going to focus on writing code, just demonstrating some samples of code. We're going to return to our scenario. So just to recap, I won't go through everything, but we're basically making a card game where the computer and the user are drawing cards and the highest card wins. So we've already done some CSS formatting, some HTML to activate the flipping of the cards. We created our randomizer in the last video, and we created a way, we called the function again so that the computer's card would essentially be calculated after the user's card. For homework, you worked on evaluating the two cards to determine which is higher and signaling the winner. So I'll just have that functionality included in the sample as we start. Let's work on keeping track of the score for the computer and the user. That can be a new thing we'll do this time. And then let's also add some refinements. So now that we've gotten the basic functionality, and again, I want us to work on a scenario like this together because I think that it demonstrates the programming process. It's not just about learning the syntax of a language, but actually learning how you break something down into parts in order to get the computer to do what you want to do. And one of those ways, one of the things that you do is, we have that initial breakdown of parts, but once we accomplish some functionality, we can always go back and make it better, improve on it. So let's do a little bit of that refinement. Let's make those cards look more like cards. So for example, we could have symbols for the suits instead of a numeric value, which has been bugging me. And then of course, we need to deal with the face cards somehow. So let's focus on that. I think being able to use some conditional logic will really help us with these tasks. All right, let's go ahead and do some coding. So here we are back at our program. I've made some upgrades to our CSS, as you can see over there. And I've actually, I've taken away the standalone button and I've turned this card into a button. So notice none of these are, but this one is. When you hover over it, you get this pointer cursor. And if you're curious about how to do that, there's just one line here, cursor, and one of the values you can use for that property is pointer. That's how I did that. And this is just the coding for a CSS calculated the background here. And I just borrowed some code from a CSS pattern site. We don't need to do anything that fancy, but I wanted to make it as much like an actual card deck so that it was recognizable as I could. So let's just review the functionality that it's got right now. So I go ahead and click on that button. Notice that message disappears. And that's super easy. I'm not going to go over that in detail. I basically just, the first command now in our start game function is just to take start button and set that to null, to nothing. And so it just makes the message disappear after it's clicked on. So no big deal there. And then we're just going ahead and using get card, which is just calling our randomizer. And it's making a little string that puts up here the value of the suit in the card. And now remember, we've got our keys down here to explain to users what the first digit is and what the second digit is. That's ridiculous. We don't want that. We want to actually make it look more like a deck of cards. And notice I've got a little garbage that I pasted in down here. This is just some research that I did. I wanted to remind myself. So there is HTML values for the card suits. So I thought that would be cool to actually have those suits displayed, and we can do that with HTML. So there's no reason we can't just add that in instead of the 0, 1, 2, 3 for that first digit. So super simple, and having some conditional logic, that's gonna help with that. Okay, so let's start with that. To improve that functionality, we want to go to our get card because that's where we're figuring out what the suit is to begin with. And notice we've got a value here. That's just the randomized version of suit. And I've actually created a little value here called suit val, and that's going to come into play as we make the part of the function that's going to switch our suit from a number to this to the actual little symbol. So we're going to use a structure called a branching structure called switch. It is also, so if you've done some coding in other coding languages, you might know it as select case. That's something from basic or true basic or visual basic. So there's some different terminology that's been used for this, but this basically is a branching command that will take a certain value, and we're going to look at suit in particular. And then it allows you to select different options based on the value of that variable. So we're gonna perform a switch with suit. We're gonna look at case 0. And if the case is 0, then we're going to set suit val equal to the, let's see, 0 was a spade, and we want that for our spade. That's our HTML code for spade. And I want to keep this semicolon. This is the ampersand and the semicolon. These are the signals to the browser that you're using an HTML code. Starts with an ampersand, ends with a semicolon. That allows you to render little symbols like that on your page in HTML. But then I also need my actual semicolon for this command. So I want to make sure I've got that correct. And then typically when you're using a switch, you're going to end your block of code, your algorithm, with break. So what that does is basically say, hey, I found the one I wanted, get out of this selection, and then it will just break out of this squiggle bracket. So remember, like I told you, these conditional structures come with squiggle brackets of their own. It'll break on out of this squiggle bracket and then come down to the next line of code. And then what that's going to be is the randomizer for the card value. So there you go. That. Our case 1 is going to be club. So we'll have our, so we're gonna basically repeat the same logic all the way down for the 4 different cases that we're doing. And notice too what I'm doing with the syntax here. So case, this would be the discrete value. If this, rather than being a numeric variable, if this were a string, I would have to encase this in quotation marks, just like you always do with literal string values. But it's number, so I can just do the number value. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done the other couple of them. Now, the other really important thing is to make sure you get your end squiggly bracket, right? You want to make sure all of this is encased within the squiggly bracket and that you get the end bracket there. So now when we're sending the value back, we actually want to send, rather than suit, which is the number, we want to send suit val, which is the HTML code for one of these 4 suits. So I'm going to go ahead and save and reload. And there you go. So that's really cool, right? So now we got little diamonds and hearts and spades, and just already that's visually a lot easier to understand, and that's making a huge difference. So that's super cool. Now, the other thing is, of course, the hearts and diamonds should be red and the spades and clubs should be black. Is there anything we can do about that? Remember, I told you sort of way back in module 1 that you can dynamically write HTML, and we've already been doing that, right? We've been using the inner HTML and we've been doing that. You can also dynamically write CSS. It's a little bit cumbersome, and there is an easier way to do it, but you can definitely do it. And in this case, not that hard to do. So let's go ahead and do that as well. And we could tuck that right into this conditional structure. Because of course, you could do all the spades and clubs at once and all the hearts and diamonds at once. You could do it in some different ways. I'm gonna go ahead and do it right within this same switch that we have here. It's gonna be something that looks a little bit like this. So it's another one of these document get element by ID things, but notice the end here. So style, you remember that's the tag that we use in HTML when we're going to be doing some CSS formatting. And then I'm using the property color, which again, you totally remember from your CSS. Any place in your CSS where you want to change the color of the font, you use color. So that's easy enough. And then of course you recognize a hexadecimal color value that we would send. Now, in this case, you're just doing the plain old value. You do not need the semicolon at the end here. Obviously you do need the semicolon at the end of the line. Now we have an issue at this point, right? Because on our HTML, we have 2 different cards. We've got the computer, we've got the user. And when we're calling get card, we call that same function for both the computer and the user. So if we want to do this for the right person, and we don't want to just make everything red or everything black for everybody, no matter what, we have to know where to target this, right? We have to know which of these 2 cards we want to turn red or black. So we actually have to change get card a little bit here and send a parameter that is the name of the place where we're going to put this. So remember, back in our HTML, the IDs are computer card and your card. So we have to, we need to know those names, and we actually want to pass those names into get card as a value. So then we can apply the color to the correct card as we're doing that. So we need to fix this a little bit. And I already used whose card as the name here. So I'm just going to make that the parameter name that'll initialize the variable, that will declare the variable for me. So I'm all set with that. And then I can use it here. Okay, and then as long as when I call get card, I'm passing it that variable, I should be good, and this should work. I'm just going to make sure I want both of these to be black, so I'll stick this one line of code in each of these places. We want this to be red, so I have a different color value in there. Okay, check that out. So I'm glad we got one that was, one black, one red right on the first try. So there we go. We've applied red to the diamond. We've applied black to the spade. Now, let me just note, so just in case you're wondering, just in case you're thinking like maybe it's trivial to assign the black ones because it's already black, right? Black is the default when we start. And so it might seem sort of trivial to do that. Let me just show you what would happen. So keep an eye on this one. The first time that red gets applied, if we don't change that value to anything else, then even the black ones are going to turn out red because that's still the governing style. So that's why we have to explicitly code these as black, just like we explicitly code these as red, because a computer is stupid. It's only going to do exactly what you tell it. So if you tell it start doing this in red and you never tell it to stop, it's just going to keep doing it in red. Now, let's deal with the score. We're able to determine who wins, right? We've been doing that okay. But we're still not calculating our score. So first of all, let's just see what we've got up here. So in order to actually show the score, right, these two bits here, that's here in the HTML code. So I've got one called computer score, one called your score. So we need to make sure we know those names. Now, what's really interesting this is kind of a feature of JavaScript when you're working with HTML, you kind of use the display of your HTML page as a type of global variable for yourself. So this value, like you can, since we have a value here, we can actually read it off the HTML page and then obviously calculate and put back a new value. So that can be a way that we can retrieve the current score. We also do need to know who the winner is, right? And we have a way of figuring that out already. So it should be pretty easy to build something that's going to do the scoring for us. Basically, what we need to do is retrieve the score that as it exists on the screen, add 1 to whoever wins or to both if they tie, and then write the new score back to the page. So those are the 3 things we need to do. And we need to, and obviously we need to do it based on who the winner is. Now we could fold it into this structure, right? And remember, this is the one that I helped you out with, and now I'm sure that this makes a lot more sense to you. We could fold it into this structure, or we could create a new function for ourselves to do that. I think it would be a little bit cleaner because the scoring is a fairly distinct element. So I think let's go ahead and create that as a new function. And I'm going to take in a parameter of winner. If we already know who the winner is, that's going to make it much easier. Let's go ahead and get in the 2 scores that we need. These are the 2, the existing scores. And then based on the value of winner, we want to increase that score and then send back the new value. We could identify a new variable that signals each one of these cases, or we could just take the variable we already have that signals it for us. We just have to make sure that we're using the correct values. That's not a problem because we have them right here. We know where they're defined. But again, this is going to be a switch case that we want here, and it's going to be winner is the variable we're going to be doing the switch about. And if we say case you win, then we want user score to increment by 1. So we can do it this way, right? And remember, I talked about that notation of the plus plus means just add 1 to it. So this will just add 1 to user score. Then we can write this value back to this place. And then here's another feature of this that I didn't show you in the other switch, and you can see it here now. So just like you can have an else in an if that's like anything else happens, do this. We can also have something called default in a switch. So we have specific cases, and then the default is if anything else happens, do this. It's good to use that kind of feature so that something will happen and you won't just get an error if none of the cases are kept, if none of the cases are identified. So I mean, unless you're using input that's like very controlled. In this case, we could discreetly do all of them. It could never be anything else. It would be fine. But you know, this is a little bit easier than again having to detail that out. But in that case, we would increase both user score and computer score, and we would send both of those things. And breaks are really important when you have a default. Okay, and then that's everything we need to do. So there's no explicit return on this one. It's just going to do some stuff, and it's going to write the scores to the screen. And again, like I said, we could have folded this into the comparison. I think it's a little bit cleaner doing the calculation, and I feel like we could even make this yet more efficient than what I have here, but this will work, and it's a good first draft. After we identify the winner, we are going to call calc score, and we're going to send it winner message. And again, we just have to do it. It's just that simple. You don't have to assign it to a variable or anything like that, because this is a function that just does a thing. It just has a result. It doesn't have an explicit return, so it doesn't have to be assigned to a variable. You can just run it. You're just going to call it and make it do its thing. So save that. We're going to reload this. Okay, so that's not working yet. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that in here because this is a good example for debugging, and I'll try not to belabor the point. So here's a key thing, right? Remember when we're getting this HTML, we're grabbing this inner HTML. This is coming through as a string value. I just tried to increment a string value. That is something that would be nonsensical to the computer. Now, you know, we can use we can use plus to concatenate strings, but to tell it to increase a string by 1, that doesn't make any sense. So we have to convert this to a numerical value. We can do that with a function called number that exists precisely for this purpose. You just need to use the word number, capital N, and then in parentheses your string value. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it now. Now that we've made this into a number, that should be a lot easier to do what we're trying to do. Okay, there we go. So you win. You got your score increased. Your score has increased from 0 to 1 and 2. Now the computer gets 1. That's good. And the computer gets, oh, there you go. You're coming up into the lead. So yeah, so that is looking good. It looks like our values are incrementing and the correct person is winning. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for now. But what I'm going to ask you to complete as one of the elements of this assignment, notice. So let me get to one that, okay, so like this, 13. Wow, is that annoying? But I want you to figure out how to use a branching structure to change the values for 11, 12, 13, and 14 to something for Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. So instead of it saying 13, wouldn't it be great if it said K there, right? So we did something really similar. You should be able to figure this out with no problem. I will tell you one other thing. I'll leave this link in the starter template for you. Let me just show you what this is. So this is a set of values that you can use to render symbols in different things, Unicode, hex, and importantly for us, HTML code. And what I was thinking was, wouldn't it be kind of cool if along with our K and Q and J, we could have some symbols, and you'll see in a second, this is where I actually got the suits, the symbols for the suits, right? Here they are. Wouldn't it be cool if we use some symbols? I was thinking, like they don't actually have Jack, Queen, King necessarily, but I thought we could maybe use a chess knight for the Jack, and then use this for the queen and use this for the king, or like the clear versions of those. There's a couple of different, like maybe these are a little bit better, either one. But if you wanted to do that, you could just take this HTML code. Remember, you need the ampersand and the semicolon for those symbols. And I would still use the K and the Q and the J, because otherwise, you know, how is someone just going to immediately know which crown is which base card? But if you put it along with this symbol, that could be really cool. So anyway, that's just a hint. You don't have to. If you just get the J's, K's, and Q's, that's cool, and the A actually, that's fine. But I just thought this would be fun, and it would make it look even more like an actual card, which is one of the things that we're trying to do in this one.